So we're here with Bliss Browne, who did a workshop at Bigger Picture yesterday, and we got talking about some really interesting stuff about social construction and using visual frameworks for that. And then she agreed to do this short talk about that. So first, could you just explain to us, Bliss, who I am, what do you do normally?
So I run an organization called Imagine Chicago, and it really helps communities focus on what's of most value and how to build partnerships to create it. So our mantra is understand, imagine, create, and really focusing on the best of what is, so understanding the best of what is, and then imagining what can be, and then creating what will be.
And you work with social construction. What is social construction?
Well, social construction is really a way of thinking which notices that as human beings, we always construct the world out of which we live, meaning there's no defined meaning of what's real. It becomes real in context. So, if you see me and you're a biologist and you see me as a mammal and someone else sees me as a mom and someone else sees me as a sex object or someone else sees me as an intellect, none of those, all of those are true, and they're not the same. And so in context, we become what we are. And our identity actually gets defined in relationship, and the way we think and make sense of life gets defined in relationship. So it becomes important then how we choose to see, because it actually determines the world out of which we live and the world out of which other people live.
Great. How is a visual framework important in working with social construction?
Well, I think in a number of ways. The first is that it really makes visible this constructive capacity that we have. Imagine that someone asks you to draw something. The first thing you have to do in order to, let's say a question that I often ask, what is the shape of hope? Or what is the shape of your hope? Well, in order to do that activity, to draw the shape of your hope, the first thing you have to do is understand what it is. You have to reflect on that yourself. Then you have to imagine it, at least in some beginning shape. As you draw it, it takes a different shape yet again as you begin to create it. But it requires you to really own that process of human creativity as something that we always do. It makes that capacity very visible. And sometimes language has the limitation that if you say the word love, and I say the word love, we may mean something similar or something completely different. But the word, because it's a word that's a commonly agreed word, we may think we mean the same thing, or justice, or creativity for that matter. But when we have a visual expression, we see the differences.
Perfect. What are the other ways that it makes sense?
Well, I think the second thing is that, for instance, if you have someone, as Bigger Picture does, who's doing a kind of visual, not recording, but facilitation. And I say facilitation because what they're really doing is making visible a constructive process which is going on in the room. And they're not only a representative of it as they create, but they're also showing that that when we hear, not only when we create, but also when we listen, we're also interpreting worlds. So as someone listens to what's going on in a whole collective, they're making visible the multitude of ways that are foundational in how we make sense. So for instance, they're noticing who's in the conversation. Is this one person speaking? Is this many people speaking? Are they at a table? What's the context within which this is happening? What's the focus of attention? What are the big, powerful words that are grabbing people's attention? What is the direction of the conversation? What's being generated as a result of the conversation? Where has the conversation begun and where it's led? So really, to me, it's almost a map of social construction as a human process that visual facilitation makes manifest. And to me, that's a very exciting way for people to begin, again, to notice that we create and produce meaning rather than inherit it.
Perfect. And what was you talked about a third way. What's that?
Well, I think the third way is when you think about the human power of storytelling, the oldest representation that we know in human history, the oldest art are cave paintings. And cave paintings tell a story. Presumably they tell you the story of, where the good hunting ground is, or what happened in the hunt, or whatever. So there's something that's an ancient, powerful ritual of human beings learning through stories in a way that we're not aware that other species do. That's a uniquely human capacity to accelerate learning. So again, what I love about working with bigger picture is that it's not only taking something which has happened and saying, here's a record of what happened. Cavemen did that too. But it's also an invitation to build on the story and become part of a story. And in any I care about civic engagement. In any engagement process, you always have a small fraction of the people who are needed as change agents involved in that particular event, whatever it is. 50,000 people at a demonstration, country of 6 million people. So, but when we can capture the story of the power of what happened, and especially you can see some thought bubbles in there saying, with a powerful question, what do you think? So when you can combine that powerful storytelling with a set of powerful questions which engage people in becoming part of that story, in owning and building on that story, these are ancient ritual acts for the human species. And in this case, when you use storytelling that way, it's also an invitation to the future. So it bridges a very long distance between past and future in a way that's provocative and inspiring.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.